Yes, sir. All right, everyone. Hey, welcome to the Monday 6:30 p.m., at least in Mountain Standard Time, live stream on my show. And look, I have none other with me than Dave Sundstrom. Thanks you for joining me today, Dave. How you doing?
Doing good, Ian. Thanks for letting me hang out.
Oh yeah, for sure, absolutely for sure. And Thrash Pondo, I have not heard from him. He's normally here, and he's like a normal, regular guest, and even my official reader of the comments, so my throat doesn't get so hoarse. Um, but I haven't heard from him, so I hope he's okay. Thrash Pondo, if you're out there, I sent you a link. You're always welcome to join. Off to a little bit of a slow start here, but let me just kind of lay out what we are talking about today. We are going to be talking about underground music before 1991. And of course, we talk about before 1991 because that's really when underground music became mainstream music. Basically that's kind of when it broke with the Nirvana apocalypse, for better or for worse. I'm a fan of Nirvana. I know you're not too much of a fan, at
I
least.
like them. They're okay.
You like them? I know
They're
a lot
okay.
of they're okay. They're okay. They're not they're not your favorite though.
Yeah, no, I probably like the Foo Fighters better. So.
I know a lot of people say that. A lot of people say that. I love the Foo Fighters. John Collins is in the house. Says the dynamic duo. Yes,
Hey,
for
John.
sure. Hey, and Tracy
Hi,
Roth-Myers.
Tracy.
Hi, Retro and Dave. Hey, how you doing? Yes. So let's talk a little. So if you're talking about underground music, is there really any underground music before like the 1980s? Do you think of any underground music before the 1980s, or do you think they kind
What
of
about
emerged?
what about like Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground? Speaking of,
Oh, yeah. So
I
funky.
don't know. Some of the New York scene, like the New York Dolls and Lou Reed. Granted, it's a different type of music. There's an element of glam to some of that music, particularly with the Dolls. But
Yeah.
yeah, they were definitely kind of a underground for their time, although definitely different types of music.
Hi, Cindy D. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. And then as always, you guys have questions for me or for my guest. I mean, I do allow a lot of leeway as far as the guests providing just platforms for me to ramble on about and my guest to ramble on about. Yeah, you had that kind of underground music before, a little bit before in the late 70s. Really, it was like kind of the punk rock scene almost. And the beginning, and I would like to say also the beginning of the rap scene, although I didn't really get into rap, but kind of rap was kind of adjacent to punk. Kind of what rap was doing underground was adjacent to what punk was doing. Thrash Pondo Pond says, "Hey, ENC and Dave Thrash Pondo, I did send you a link, man. Join us for the show. You are more than welcome to come on. I need an official reader so my
Yeah,
voice doesn't
I'm
get
not
so
going to stick
hoarse."
around for the whole time, Thrash Pondo. You've got to come and hang out with Ian here.
Yes, for sure. And hello, ENC and Dave and everyone. James 328 says hi. All right, so here's the $1 million question. And that is, what is an underground? What is an underground? What is underground music? And why is it underground music? Why do they call it that? What's your opinion?
I think it's for me. It's a feeling, right? It's like it's not mainstream. It's music that's cool. It's that kind of music that you know about, and not everybody else knows about. It's like a cool club that you belong to for a little bit of time before the band sells out and goes completely commercial.
Yeah, yeah. And then and then see, this is kind of what I see happening, and you can tell me whether or not I'm right in this assessment. I see the kind of punk scene starting to emerge and become popular. There's a few bands that just shot to the stardom as far as the punk scene was concerned, and then a few adjacent punk bands as well. And then you had the record companies just stepping in, and punk went as dead as quickly as disco did. The difference is, and I mean, you had punk bands being signed like they do one show, but everybody was looking for uh, the next Sex Pistols or the next Ramones. Everybody was looking for that. The difference between, and then the same thing happened with disco. But the difference between disco and punk is punk survived underground. Punk survived and created this like independent movement. Like we're going to survive even though the big record companies and record labels aren't behind us. And then they started producing like all kinds of independent and punk music and punk adjacent music. I think of you, you told me you got to see one of my all-time favorite bands, the Violent Femmes, 3 times.
Yeah, I've seen them multiple times in multiple venues. The first time being a little record store here in Salt Lake City, Utah, where they came in and just did a little acoustic gig, and it was tons of fun. But yeah, I've seen them a couple times since as well, and they're
what
always great.
what year did you see them with that?
That was probably the first time was probably 80. It was pre my LDS mission. I left on that on 85, so it was probably 83, 84 time frame.
Okay, so that was like their first
Yeah,
album.
Blister in the Sun, Gone Daddy Gone. Those were the songs. I'm thinking, was Gone Daddy Gone? No, Blister in the Sun was out. Gone Daddy Gone wasn't out yet, I don't think. But
Uh,
those early songs of Gordon and the Boys, classic stuff.
yeah, for sure, for sure. So, what's your favorite? I'm gonna bring Thrash Pondo. How you doing, Thrash?
Oh,
TP.
never better. Never better. Can you hear me, guys? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I hear you
All right.
fine.
I'm just gonna. Never
All
better.
right.
Sorry. I just saw the link.
Okay.
Yeah, I just saw the link. So, oh, there we go.
So, what then is some of your favorite underground? What you would consider to be underground music, Dave?
Okay. So bands that I enjoyed in, I guess it depends on the time frame, but another band that I really like that I get it. It's not for everybody's taste, but a little California punk band. Well, two of them, Dead Kennedys and X.
I heard of Dead Kennedys. I have. I'm not sure if I've heard of X.
Yeah, X.
Motel Room in My Bed. That was probably their big hit back in '83. Would you say, Dave?
Yeah, roughly 83 was when they finally had a few breakout songs that made it onto college radio and even maybe some of the modern music stations.
Yeah. Well, college radio really kind of kept what I was talking about, that movement, alive. Is there anything you would add to that assessment that I made? That kind of historical assessment of underground music. Is there any way you would tweak that, or anything you would add to that?
I think it's just John Collins mentions Oingo Boingo. I definitely early Oingo Boingo belongs in that crowd, and I saw who Tracy mentioned Patti Smith. I would
Mm,
include her as well. There's a lot of, if you go look at that the chats conversation, the conversation going on in the chat, there
yes.
are a lot of great suggestions there in terms of bands that would definitely. Tracy mentions REM. I got to see REM at the
Cindy
very
D.
beginning of their career as well.
I love
Here in
REM.
Salt Lake City, Utah. We saw them at the fairgrounds. People didn't even know who REM was. I think they had maybe Radio Free Europe had been just released.
That was
That
like
as
their
a
big
thing,
hit.
yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
and but you know what? Here's the thing I love about underground music, indie music, whatever you want to call it, college radio, is that it was so broad. There are so many things. I saw that list from Cindy. You've got the Sugar Hill Gang. It wouldn't be surprising to see the Sugar Hill Gang there. Grandmaster Flash would show up on some of those alternative radio stations as well, along with Depeche Mode, The Cure, REM. Those are the. I just keep looking back to the chat. B-52,
Yeah.
Devo, just amazing stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. The Cure, yes, The Cure. I love these bands. The beginning of David Bowie. David Bowie was a real big influence on what would be I would be considered alternative rock.
And that was
The,
70s.
and
Going
that
back to your initial question, that was particularly in the mid to late 70s.
Yes. The reason why I put it in the 80s, why I kind of put a pin there, is not because you can't see rumblings of it before that, but it has to do with the fact that that's when it was driven underground. In the 70s, they were still getting signed. They were part of this big scene that was emerging. But in the 80s is when it started to becoming underground. We said, hey, we're going to survive on our own. And we have a lot to thank from the college radio. The beginning of John Collins, yes, the beginning of David Bowie for sure. Who else? Patti Smith.
My, yeah.
Yes, another. Do you like Patti Smith?
Oh yes, very much so. Very much. He was great.
Yeah, you fans of Patti Smith. And someone is welcoming you,
Hi,
Cindy
Cindy
D
D.
said.
Good to be seen.
It is good to be seen. And as you mentioned before, John Collins
Boingo,
writes,
boingo.
Oingo Boingo. Yes, I remember an interview that I heard with Danny Elfman where he said, I did 2 world tours and made $1 million. I wrote 1 song for The Simpsons and made $2 million. And I never did Oingo Boingo again. I was like, I understand that. All right. I think
Oh,
Dave, I can't see anymore. Dave might be
I'll,
out.
I'll
So,
be right back.
oh, we'll be
okay.
right
All
here.
right.
My favorite. I just noticed something about Oingo Boingo. Actually,
Okay.
I was watching the video for Weird Science.
Hmm.
It came up the other day, and you know the scene where they're pushing the sort of wheel that's going around. It looks like a clothesline, and all the women who don't quite work out are all pushing it. That scene actually comes from the 1930s horror movie White Zombie. The Boris
Oh,
Karloff, not Boris Karloff, Bite My
yeah.
Tongue, Bela Lugosi film. The zombies work the mill that he runs, and
Right.
that's when they spend all day kind of pushing it. So, and I'm like, wow, that's because I guess Oingo Boingo was really into old cinema. They actually made their own homage to old cinema with a film called A Forbidden Zone with Harvey
Yeah.
Billy
Yeah.
Shez. So, well, I was just thinking about Oingo Boingo just the other day for the first time in years. But yes, John
Yeah.
Collins, Oingo Boingo was great.
Oingo
It sure
Boingo
was.
was awesome.
Oh, James328 says, not really my kind of music, but thought I would check out the stream.
Well, thank you, James. I really appreciate you checking out the stream. Really means a lot to us, even though it might not be your kind of music. What's interesting is our kind of music kind of changes over the years. So there was a phase there where I really hated heavy metal. And I was really more, especially when alternative rock came out, and I was really jumped on the bandwagon of early 90s alternative rock. Try to pretend I was never into heavy metal, even though I really was. But the new sound really struck such a chord with me. But later on, I've kind of come back and I've learned to respect it for what it is a little bit more. But for me, I understand not really liking a genre of music in its entirety, but liking a band here and there, or at least respecting it. I feel that way about heavy metal. I'm starting to re-like heavy metal more as I get older because I was really not a heavy metal type of person. I started listening to it when I started running because I was like, I needed something very, fast to run.
Energetic.
Yeah, kickstart
Oh,
my
dear.
heart. And check this out. Cindy Roth-Myers says, I love the Dead Kennedys. I heard, now this is the sad fact about when a movement goes underground, there are 2 types of attitudes that happen with that underground music. People who don't mind success, and then people who hate success. And I really think that's sad. I think what we don't want is what underground people didn't want was manufactured success, like you were seeing coming out of the industry. But unfortunately, the Dead Kennedys, the lead singer, got beat up one time at a nightclub because he was seen as somebody who was selling out because he actually did an album. He was just he did an album with a bigger, I think it was Elektra Records or something like that. But Dead Kennedys definitely an underground music. And we're talking about how underground music gave rise to alternative rock music. And Dave, you mentioned you saw REM.
Yeah.
before they went big. And REM on the college. I saw REM too, but I saw REM after they went big. I saw them on their Monster tour.
Twice. I saw them once at the Worcester Centrum in Massachusetts, of course, and also at a big open air venue called, it's something else now, but it was called Great Woods back then, and that was one heck of a show. And in fact, one time they were being backed up by 10,000 Maniacs, and they do a great show too. They were romantically involved at one time, I believe.
Yeah. So here's the question: when you guys saw REM, did at any of those points? I saw when Michael Stipe had hair.
Oh yeah,
Luscious locks of hair. It was amazing. And then later on, he was follically challenged, such as myself.
I saw him. The time that I saw him was when he had just shaved his head bald for the Monster tour. Yeah. So what's interesting, and I'm trying to look up here, is, and this is going to show you kind of how much of an REM geek that I am. My favorite REM song is Country Feedback. It still is. And what was interesting is when I saw them at their show, I had no idea of this. He was up there, he's doing his Michael Stipe thing, and he said, "You know what? We haven't played this song in a while, and I don't know why we haven't." He said, "But out of a band, this is our band's favorite song. As all of us, this is our favorite song." And it was my favorite REM song. So I was just like, "That's great. You're a true fan, right? You're a true fan." Let me see what else we got here in the comments.
As long as you're talking about favorite songs real quick, I've got to share my 3 favorite REM songs.
Go for it.
All have, they have reasons for it. Radio Free Europe, because that was the first time I saw them live. But then What's the Frequency, Kenneth? Mm-hmm. I don't know because I love the story behind that.
Mm-hmm.
True to life story about, I believe it was Dan Rather. that was hijacked. Yes. And then, of course, Stand, because I love the Chris Elliott sitcom Get a Life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Interesting connection. Cindy D says, Scandal, Berlin, Roxy Music, The Fix. All great ones, all bands. Good bands.
Berlin actually came to Cedar City.
Yeah.
I don't know if you knew that or not. Yeah, that was crazy. And I knew nothing about Berlin. I was really into Twisted Sister when Berlin came out. I had a Twisted Sister pin on my jacket and everything. On my uniform? I did.
Uniform?
I was in a uniform. So I had no idea who Berlin is.
I saw Berlin with Thompson Twins.
Oh gosh.
In 80. Ooh. It was during the No More Lies tour.
Yeah.
They were. It was a great double bill out here in Salt Lake City. And then one more story real quick. The Fix. I saw the Fix up at Snowbird in Utah. And it was early 80s. It was right after they were starting to have big success with the Saved by Zero album. Was the album called Saved by Zero? Can't remember. Reach the Beach album. And the crowd was so rowdy and throwing so many things up on the stage that about the third or fourth song, I made a video about this, and eventually I took it down, but I might put it back up on my Music Memories channel. But eventually, Cy Kernan, the lead singer, was flipping the audience off during a song, but people kept throwing things up on the stage, and they, after that song, left and did not want to come back out. Eventually, they came out and played a very abbreviated set, but I was kind of ashamed of Utah that night and the crowd that was there, because completely unruly, completely disrespectful to the artists that were up there that were trying to share their music. So
yeah, that's always sucks, and I don't know why you would do that. And even if I went to a band that I absolutely hated, like Poison, I would not like boo them. I really wouldn't. I mean, what's the point? They're up there, they're doing their thing. You know what I mean? I would never do anything like that personally. But I know fans. It's almost like fans of sports get the same way. They just get. Go ahead.
in the 80s in the music scene, I can tell you why they were doing it. There was a lot of recreational chemicals going around back then, and people just got rowdy. It was just the way things were.
It was total substances. It was, whether it was alcohol or drugs, it was just way too many people having way too good of a time, and not really there for the music, but rather just for the party, like
for the rowdiness. I could never, to this day, I don't understand why Coke Zero hasn't adopted Saved by Zero as the slogan for their beverage. It writes itself.
It does.
They don't want to. They can afford it too. They can afford it.
I know, right? Tracy Roth-Myers says the B-52s with one of my favorites, the hopelessly catchy Rock Lobster. Oh, yes, B-52s.
Yeah.
Great, yeah.
Rock Lobster, that's some. I didn't get in. See, I'm a little bit of a phony, so I just have to say I'm a little bit of a phony. I did not get into underground music until retrospect, until after '91, when I was into some underground music, but for the most part, it was one of those things that's like, well, if this is out there, if something like Nirvana's out there, what else is out there? And that caused me to go back and look at some of these underground music that inspired what was happening as I was kind of coming to age. So B-52s, I didn't start listening to them until after. Of course, they were popular. I listened to Rome, loved Rome, of course. But I didn't start listening to some of their older stuff until after 91. Also, Tracy Roth-Myers. Sorry.
Devo.
One of my favorite bands. And by the way, did you hear their newest? Have you guys heard their newest one? It's like 2000. I think it was like 9. So I things go by so quickly. You know what I mean? It's like 2009. Now that's considered old, but
it's not new anymore.
But
I know their re-emerging album, when it came out, it was phenomenal.
Fresh.
It was absolutely phenomenal.
It was fresh.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
That's the name. That was the name of the album. Ian.
Yes,
it's fresh.
Not phenomenal, fresh. Yes. Yeah.
My granddaughter watched Yo Gabba Gabba, and he actually used to do recurring roles on Yo Gabba Gabba. And I'm like, do you know what that is? That's Devo. And she's like, well, but I'm like, so now we have 3 generations of Devo.
Was that Mark Mothersbaugh that was doing
Yes.
that?
Yes, he had a recurring role as the art teacher musician on Yo Gabba Gabba, and my granddaughter ate it up.
It's amazing if you look, and just like when you watch a TV show, look to see who composed the music, and if it isn't Elfman and it sounds like Elfman, it's usually Mothersbaugh.
Oh, okay, interesting. I was wondering, wasn't the Ting Tings on that show too? Yo Gabba Gabba.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's where I first heard of the Ting Tings, and then we've got the Talking Heads, the Heads and Cars. Yes, 2 very influential bands. Talking Heads, part of that original, what you were talking about at the beginning, Dave, that CGBG, whatever that. Yes, club. Yeah, they were part of that kind of newer music. I would say that's almost the beginning of what would be considered alternative rock, because you couldn't categorize them. They weren't completely punk. They didn't sound like anything else that was going on there. And let's see, Tracy Chapman. Fan of the hits, not so much a fan of the. And I should be letting Thrash. We talked about this, and I'm sorry, Thrash. I need to let you read these, and then I respond. I will do that.
Force of habit, I know.
Yes, but I do. Well, let me say, I wasn't a huge fan of hers, but I do like that kind of acoustic sound. There is one lady out there. She had her name's Kristen Hall. If you haven't heard of her, go look her up. Her first album, especially, called Real Life Stuff. It's really good, but it's just kind of that acoustic guitar stuff. There's a song called Howie. That's probably one of her better songs on the album, but the whole first album, Real Life Stuff, is amazing. She had a little bit of popularity in a group called the Sugarland. Yeah, Sugarland, a country group called Sugarland. She was in Sugarland for a moment, but then she left Sugarland. Very good artist. I highly recommend. If you like Tracy Chapman, you'll like this. Did you guys like the acoustic scene at all? Were you guys acoustic fans?
I liked it. I like Tracy Chapman. If you put a gun to my head, I couldn't tell you another song she did. All I remember is Fast Car, which was very, very catchy and got a lot of airtime back in the 80s. But I can't remember much of else what she did. And I did like the acoustic sound, but I went more for bigger sound, shall we say? you know,
Yeah.
Warrant, Aerosmith, that type of thing. Although that was one of the great things about the whole college sound back in the '80s. It was an umbrella. There were a number of different subgroups, so you could actually cherry pick. There was plenty to listen to in whatever subcategory. There
Yeah.
was light, there was heavy, there was slow, there was fast.
Uh, Dave, you a fan of the acoustic sound, or was that something kind of that was outside your wheelhouse?
Wasn't a big fan of Tracy. Terrell's asking about the Indigo Girls. I like the Indigo Girls quite a bit.
Yeah.
I've seen them live, but I like acoustic music. Here's what I like. I like when harder rock music, like heavy metal bands, do acoustic versions. So I know we're getting way off topic here, but
No, yeah.
if I have to pick when I really love acoustic music, it's when I hear an acoustic version of a song that I've loved in a harder and heavier format. A couple that come to mind real quick is the Foo Fighters' Everlong. There's just a fantastic version that Dave Grohl does on his own, I believe. And then there was Warrant did a really nice acoustic version of I Saw Red that was just phenomenal. It was a B-side on a single. You'll find it on YouTube, Thrash.
I will. And speaking of that format, I don't know if either one of you guys or anyone out there watches Archer, but they did a really amazing rockabilly version of Danger Zone. Kenny Loggins actually does background on it, and it was really amazing. I thought it was really good. It's also on YouTube.
I'll check it out.
Watch the show. Oh, Terrell Bellinger says, "Hello, Ian. Hello, Thrash. Happy Monday."
Happy Monday. Don't forget to say hi to Dave. And go ahead, read that one.
And Cindy D says, The Pretenders, and I'm guessing she meant the Motels, not the Motets. But yes, the Motels were very good. I think I have an album of theirs stashed somewhere in my garage/bridge.
Both great.
Only the Lonely, great song. Love that song.
And then here's an underground band for you. We were talking about this the other day.
Yeah, Romeo Void.
Yeah, Tracy Chapman says Romeo
Void. But I was giving them a listen, and really, there was really only one song that I really liked, and that was the main one.
Never Say Never.
Yeah, Never Say Never. I listened to some of the other ones, and they were. I'm not a huge fan of horns in rock music. It just is not my thing. I was never a fan of ska because of that. I know ska had a real big reemergence in the late 90s, but I just couldn't get into it because I didn't like the horns, and that has a little bit too much of a horn base. Now I do have some exceptions to that rule. So In Excess does lay down some horn tracks in some of their songs, and I'm a huge In Excess fan. So consistency is not my thing, but but for the most part, I don't like it. It's just not my deal. Go ahead, Thrash.
Tracy Roth-Myers says the, and go ahead, Ian. I'm guessing you were going to say the same song. Go ahead, Ian.
No, it's okay. I really don't know any of their music at all. That's what I was gonna say. I know who they are, but I have not even heard. Well, I probably have, but I don't remember it enough to really put it away in my mind.
Armageddon Days was probably their biggest song, and that was basically a warning about the hyping tensions in the Middle East and people politicizing and even militarizing religion. And it's an excellent song, a little on the angry side, but had a very solid message of give peace a chance, only in a more hard rock kind of way, I guess you'd say.
Right.
One more thing, I got to get back to Never Say Never because I have to read this into the record. When my wife and I got married, we wanted to go non-traditional. So that first dance we did together, that little romantic two-step, we did to Never Say Never.
Never Say Never.
By Romeo. All
right. I'm gonna have you read this one, and we're gonna pause. Sure. We're gonna talk about this for a moment.
Sure. Taylor Behringer says, alt rock of the 80s was nothing like the alt rock of today.
Yes. Dave, chime in on this one a little bit if you want to, because I've got a few things I want to say, but I want to give some time to you to
Well,
speak
I
about
think
it.
it's one of those things where it's like kind of like beauty. It's in the eye of the beholder.
Hmm.
And I love alt rock of the 80s. And I would definitely agree with that statement that Terrell's making.
Hmm.
But that's because that was when I was 20, 30, that 25 to, you know, to 30. That was just the sweet spot of really loving music and not being distracted by other things in life that come and, take up valuable time in our day. So yeah, I agree. Another band that immediately comes to mind of the 80s, and no, it was 80s. I wanted to say early 90s, but it was 80s. Is they were around after that, but they were hit their peak in the 80s. Was XTC, Andy
Wow.
Partridge, and
Oh yeah.
love those guys. So good.
1, 2, 3, 4,
Yeah.
5. Yeah.
Great song. That one and Dear God are two of my favorites.
Yeah, Dear God's pretty
It's
controversial.
a
One of
very
those early
controversial
Very
song.
controversial
controversial.
songs. Yeah, so for me, alternative rock is really my main staple of music. I go off on all different directions. Of course, I listen to some heavy metal now, especially some things like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden and some faster paced stuff because I run a lot. But I mean, if you're talking about a brand of music, it was that original group of bands that broke with Nirvana that couldn't be labeled, and that's where they came up with the name alternative rock. And I described alternative rock as a group of bands that could not squarely be fit into one category. It wasn't that they were just pushing the boundaries of a category. They were really in at least two different groups. They were really at least in two different groups. So, for example, I would say The Cure is one of my all-time favorite bands, great underground band. But to me, they pushed the edges of what would be considered new wave, but they didn't really go beyond the boundary of new wave. On the other hand, you look at a band like Violent Femmes. Violent Femmes is a punk band or are they an acoustic band? They're both. You can't fit them into one category. Therefore, you came up with this idea of, well, it's rock music, but it's alternative rock music. And any band that can't be fit squarely into one band. Now, this is where the crossover comes in because there's such thing as underground music and then there's alternative rock, and they kind of go hand in hand. But you can have a band that's underground, like an underground punk band or an underground new wave band or an underground other kind of band, but then that gave rise to these other bands that were going, you know what, I'm going to take a little bit of new wave, I'm going to take a little bit of punk, I'm going to take a little bit of metal, and they just couldn't be classified. So you had that whole alternative nation coming out or in 120 minutes. Remember that on MTV, 120
MTV.
minutes. I was a big fan of both of those, and that was my staple. When it broke with Nirvana, but just before Nirvana hit, I was listening to the Violent Femmes quite a bit. I was listening to the Cult. I was listening to a band called Bang Tango, which was a metal band, but they were so obscure that nobody really even ever heard. I was listening to Drama Rama. I don't know if you remember Drama Rama. They were kind of a power
Ringing
punk
a
band.
bell, but
You look them up. They're kind of
I
a
don't.
cheesy power punk band, power pop band, and so alt rock was definitely my go-to there. And it is. And when you speak about alt rock today is different. Alt rock today is there's so few. There's one band out there that I keep pushing every time I get a chance to talk about it, and I really encourage everybody to go listen to them, listen to everything that they do because it's all great. And it's a brand called Brand New, and they're not new anymore. Their last album was 2017. They came out in '03, so 2017, not that long ago, but they are fantastic, absolutely fantastic. All right.
James 328 says, like some of the bands when they became mainstream, couldn't hear them before that. Let me guess, it wasn't a college radio station in your area.
Yeah. A lot of people had that problem. Did you have that problem, Dave?
No, we had a radio station called KCGL out here in Utah that later became KJQ. but it was an early alt radio station, college radio station that fortunately for us, you can even find someone put some old timey broadcasts from like the early 80s on YouTube from the radio station. It's so much fun to go back and listen to. So we had it. We had all sorts of, that's why when I talk about these bands and being able to see them, it was that station, KCGL and then KJQ, that was always bringing those bands out for us to see.
Yeah, I had that problem big time. I might have actually gotten into alt rock a little sooner, but I mean, really, if it wasn't on MTV, I didn't know about it. And you know, you'd go to the record store, and occasionally somebody at the record store would know a few different bands. But you know, living in a small town at the time, like Cedar City, it was. I mean, it was so. There, it was hard to find any new music.
What radio stations did you even get out there? Did you get you didn't get the ones from Salt Lake City area, did you?
No, not that I know of. We had a show. There was there's the station still exists, but they've gone through some emanations, and they used to play a show every Friday night called the Metal Shop, and it was a heavy metal kind of thing where you got to hear new metal that you might not have necessarily heard before. But that's the closest thing to any type of new music that wasn't on MTV, unfortunately. It wasn't until later on. All right. Oh wait. Go ahead, Thrash Bondo.
John Cohn says, and I'm guessing this is a question. Anything Lilith Fair?
Yeah. I liked Juliana Hatfield 3. I don't know if you ever heard of that band.
Sure.
I think that they were pretty good.
Who sang Uncle Tom's Diner? Suzanne Vega. Did she ever go to the fair?
Oh, maybe. I liked Suzanne Vega. I thought she was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Back in the day. Oh, what's that? I forgot. I keep forgetting her name. Speaking of girls in alternative rock, she sang a song. She's got a very interesting name, but it was called "A Twist in My Sobriety."
Oh.
That's the name of the song. I think she's got like an Eastern European name that's really hard to remember, but it's "A Twist in My Sobriety." She's a very interesting early kind of alt rock stuff.
Anita Takiram.
Yes. I remember the reason why Suzanne Vega tripped my memory is at the MTV Music Awards that year. They were both up for an award for female artist, and Suzanne Vega went out with Luca, but that was one of them that was up there. Very interesting video. Now I don't know everything about her as far as what everything is good or not, but that song "Twist in My Sobriety" is very good, and I'd be surprised if they didn't have. If they didn't have it. My dog's barking in the background. I don't know if you can hear. She gets excited about dogs on television. She thinks they're trying to attack us. All right.
Oh, Tracy Roth-Myers says, I saw U2 in '82 back home in Chicago. Tickets with $13.50 American.
All right. Awesome. Tracy and I have that in common. I saw U2 with The Alarm out here, and I didn't spend more than $20.
Oh, wow.
Agree with Andy.
What year did you see him, Dave?
Early 80s.
Oh, early 80s.
It was maybe
before Joshua Tree.
Yep, before Joshua Tree. Probably 83, 82, 83. Salt Lake City Fairgrounds.
John Collins writes, Dave, was there a specific point in your life where your parents said, okay, you can see and listen to whatever you want now?
Well, it was kind of like a don't ask, don't tell policy that they initiated around 16. So prior to that, I grew up in a fairly rigid home with lots of rules and very conservative. And because of that, prior to that, I was listening to a lot of John Denver, the Osmonds, the Carpenters. Sean Cassidy was about as hard as it got. I remember having that Born Late album. So, and I did, Grandma bought me Kiss Destroyer early on, and that album was confiscated and taken away from me.
I don't mean to laugh.
Yeah. I wasn't allowed to see that Kiss Phantom of the Park until later on. And all the kids at Sunday school were talking about that movie, and I felt so bad I couldn't see it. But so about 16-ish, John, was when folks decided that, I was kind of at the age where they were going to try to not police everything that I was doing and listening to. And that might have been a mistake on their part, quite frankly.
The fools. They trusted me.
The fools. That's when I went out and bought that Dead Kennedy album, Kennedy's album, Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables, and California Uber Alice. Great song.
Tracy Roth-Myers writes, Chris Elliott, get a life.
I think that was a reference to an earlier statement we were talking about. I'm behind here.
Yeah. Cindy D, Lisa Stansfield, Bazia, and Paul Young.
Yeah.
Is it true about those three?
Yeah. By the way, just to Bazia and Paul Young, what were you saying, Dave? Oh, Dave's leaving us.
Dave had to go bye-bye.
He's saying he was leaving. He's going
he was
by.
Being settled. It was an honor to actually appear on screen with him. Not that it's also an honor to appear with you, but it was very nice to see Dave tonight.
I get it. If he's on, he's the star of the show for sure. All right, let's see. Kate Bush. I'm not familiar with that band. Are you familiar with that band?
The singer, yes, I am. I couldn't tell you one song she did. A girl I dated for a while in college was really into her, but I never acquired the ear for it. But she was very popular when I was in college, probably, a long time ago.
Yes. So, okay, go ahead.
John Collins, Skid Row with Sebastian Bach, not after.
Yeah, Skid Row, and maybe this was a reference to maybe an earlier conversation we were having about metal or something like that. But I was a big Skid Row fan. I was a big Sebastian Bach fan. He was one of those. Singers that outshined. I mean, you can't listen to him and you can't listen to Skid Row and not think Sebastian Bach. He just had one of those amazing, powerful voices. He was a lead singer among lead singers. There are a lot of singers who do that. I mean, at the time I was really into it. I'm not so much into that at this point, but at the time it was certainly amazing. And by the way, just so you know, I can at least sound identical to Sebastian Bach. I'll save you. I can. Wow. I'm not going to do that now, but because the problem with doing a Sebastian Bach impersonation is you really have to project. I mean, so it's nothing I can keep quiet. You know what I mean? And then I have to do it with the guitar behind me and get into it and stuff like that. But we used to play Skid Row in the car and turn up the radio, and I would sing, and people would think that Sebastian Bach was in the car with us. That's not a lie, by the way. I'm not tooting my own horn. It's true.
I believe it.
I could sound identical to Sebastian Bach, but again, it's nothing I could just do on the fly. You have to really project that sound. I mean, he screams, wow, I mean, he really goes after it. It's nothing you can kind of do quietly, and it's a little difficult to do a cappella. It's a little, you know what I mean? You have to have that guitar behind that.
Picture him.
Yeah.
I remember I saw Aerosmith in Boston on their New Year's Eve show. This would have had to have been, 89. And Skid Row backed them up. And it was right after the infamous bottle into the crowd. Remember, he hit the bottle, he threw it back, and there was all kinds of fanfare and shenanigans. And I remember the joke of the night was, watch out for thrown bottles. That was a big thing on the way to the show. I just wanted to do that into the record because everybody remembers that incident. If you think Skid Row, you have to at least read that into the record. But Terrell Bellinger says, Get a Ride with Chris Elliott was quite a good show, part of the Fox lineup during the early years, but was overshadowed by the other shows because it didn't have strong ratings.
And why didn't it? I have no idea. I thought it was a great show. One of my favorite. Okay, we're going to go through some of these quickly to kind of catch up.
Sure.
Go ahead. Read
it. Roth-Myers says, I love Get a Life.
Yep. And
Cindy D says, loved the Thompson Twins.
They were great. They were absolutely wonderful.
Terrell Bellinger says, sorry, I misspelled the word ratings. I didn't even notice. I read so fast, and I'm trying to prevent the glare in my glasses that I didn't even pick up on that. She says bye to Dave. Tracy Roth-Myers, I was into Underground since 79 Q.
Cool.
Like
Cool.
what?
70. I don't know. I don't know what 79Q is, but I don't know what
I'm
Q
assuming,
means.
yeah, she means 1979. I don't know. The Q is, QED, I'm guessing.
Oh, yeah, or maybe just a slip on the typeboard. So that's cool. I
Probably.
really, I no, I was a fake. I was a total phony. I was one of those people who got into it afterwards and tried to pretend they were always into it. And it wasn't until after I got, it wasn't until after I got into it wasn't until that first group of alternative rock bands broke that I kind of went back and started looking at some of those older ones. But I loved them. That's how I got into the Pixies. I mean, and Pixies has been one of my all-time favorite bands, along with Jesus and the Mary Chain.
Tracy Roth Myers, I was 12 in 79, laugh out loud. I was 12 as well. We just figured it out. You're like, I think a month older than I am, Tracy, because I too was 12 in 79. And Terrell Bellinger says, unpopular opinion, NWA helped bring gangster rap out of the underground and into the mainstream despite earning criticism.
For sure. For sure. NWA does deserve recognition for that. They were very innovative. And then I don't know if they, I wasn't really too into rap, but as far as were they the first ones to kind of get big out of the West Coast? Because rap was kind of an East Coast thing for a while, and
I
then
believe they were straight out of Compton and
they,
all that.
yeah,
That wasn't
yeah,
them. I mean.
yeah.
Cindy D. People got tired of the songs of the Fix when Toyota used it in a commercial. I remember that with zero money down. Yes.
I don't remember that.
Oh, Terrell Berenger. How come no one ever talked about the Indigo Girls?
Indigo Girls are great. I love the Indigo Girls. I can't say I'm a huge fan. But if you, like I said, as I mentioned before, if you look up Kristen Hall was kind of moved in that same circle. And I was just a bigger Kristen Hall fan than I was an Indigo Girls fan. I have everything Kristen Hall's done except for her stuff with Sugarland. But I think if you like the Indigo Girls, let me really encourage you to check out Kristen Hall, especially her first one. Her second and third one are both really good, but just not as good as her first one. And then her fourth album, the one that's more recent, is also really excellent as well. But everything she does is real good. And if you like the Indigo Girls, you'll definitely like Kristen Hall for sure.
Peter Roth-Myers, the Runaways. Yes, the Runaways were great.
Are they underground or were they just a rock band? I don't know if they were really underground. I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know because I wasn't. I wasn't there when that happened. I'm only looking at them. They kind of were like punk though. I mean, obviously punk. It's kind of weird because you have Joan Jett, who was punk, went kind of mainstream metal for a little while, and then out of that also you had Lita Ford, who went way mainstream metal
Yeah.
for a while. Even dated Chris Holmes Chris Holmes from Wasp. Um, but then Joan Jett kind of went back to doing her punk thing, which I don't think she ever really left. I think she always had that. Even when you saw her on a show like the Headbangers Ball, you it was still more of a punk feel to it. I Hate Myself because for Loving You or that kind of song was way more punk rock than anything. So I'll say Runaways. Yes, you're gonna say
First,
something.
first concert I ever went to as a kid back in 1982 was Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. She was my first concert, yeah.
Right.
Almost 40 years ago now.
Wow.
Oh, Spaceman Dudley. Mott the Hopple. Thumbs up.
I don't know what that means, buddy, but
Mott the
glad you
Hopple to
could
you
join
too.
us. Yes.
Cindy D. The Go-Go's, all female, very innovative.
Yes. Love the Go-Go's. I also really like Jane Mansfield's solo album or solo band Frosted. And I love the Go-Go's and I liked Jane Mansfield's single or solo album Frosted, solo band Frosted. and did not care for the lead singer, whose name I'm forgetting now at the moment. Didn't care for her stuff. She kind of went more Madonna, the lead singer of the band. Then they broke up. She went more the Madonna route, and Jane. Gosh, I'm forgetting the name. The guitarist of the group and one of the main songwriters of the group, and in my opinion, had the better voice, although not the more upfront, pretty voice, but the better solid voice. Went and did a band called Frosted, which was very underground. Loved it. Loved it.
What did you think
Also
of?
loved the Bangles. Go ahead.
Oh, had such a crush on her. Oh,
Yeah.
what did you think of Throwing Muses, by the way? The sort of '80s underground band. Are you familiar with them at all? They had that
Say it
big
again.
album, Throwing Muses. Do you remember them at all?
No.
They had like one big album. I think it would have been, I want to say, in the late '80s. It was called Green. I wish I had brought up because I can't think of one song they did off of it. But if you get a chance, they're on YouTube. Check out Throwing Muses. They're
Okay.
very catchy.
Okay. All right.
Oh, Tracy Roth-Myers says yes, Cindy D.
Oh, must be a inside thing.
Yeah, they're responding to each other. Cindy D. Unplugged. Yes, Dave. Eric Clapton. Layla was good.
Yes. Yeah, I always like unplugged stuff too. I even remember Bon Jovi doing unplugged. That was one of the emphasis for the unplugged series was Bon Jovi doing
Yes,
unplugged at MTV Live,
I
and they
remember
did phenomenal job. Phenomenal job. Uh,
that now. Tracy Roth-Myers. Thrash. Yes. To you too, Tracy.
yeah, I don't. Is she saying you thrash or is she saying the type of music? I don't know.
Good point. And now she's saying XTC. And John Collins is saying, Dave, was there a point? Oh, we've already
Oh,
addressed that one. Yes. I,
yes. I
I'm having
I think
flashbacks.
I didn't.
Trader Myers says, I have a very electric taste in music. I'm sorry,
Eclectic.
eclectic. The glare on my glasses. Yeah, very eclectic taste in music.
Very good, Tracy. I like to think of myself as having somewhat of an eclectic taste too. If you like, you seem to be into a lot of the same bands that I'm into. Please do me the favor of looking up the bands that I recommend, and I would love to hear your opinion on them as well. So look up uh, um, Brand New. Look up everything after their first album. Brand New's first album was more punk, kind of a heavier punk, but their last everything from Brand New on from that first one, The God and Devil Are Raging Inside Me, Science Friction or Science Fiction, and
I like science
the
fiction better.
I couldn't remember if it was called. I couldn't remember if it's actually called Science Friction or it might be called Science Fiction. I can't remember. Um, but really good stuff. Really good stuff. The Devil and God Are Raging Inside Me. The first 5 tracks off that are worth their weight in absolute gold. Also, I'm going to go way deep underground. Nobody's going to know about this artist. I'm going to guarantee you, if you know about this artist, I'm going to be super surprised at everybody. And that is a guy called Mike Knott, Mikeknott, and he was in a band called Lifesavers Underground, LSU. People didn't necessarily get into him because he kind of had a Christian background. But listen, it's not like you're listening to Christian music. He's done things called Mike Knott. He's done things called Lifesavers. Lifesavers, Huntington Beach, one of the best albums ever. I think I have a copy of the tape back here. And LSU, a lot of stuff they do is really good. Some of it's gets a little weird. Highly recommend that, and it's all free on YouTube. If you look up Mike Knott or you look up LSU, and he had a big name album called Aunt Betty's, really good album. He had 2 of them. Aunt Betty's the first one. It was on Elektra Records, and I think that's free on YouTube too. Really good stuff. Trust me. And I would love to hear if people don't like it or they do like it. We'll have to have a follow up on this. All right.
Tracy Roth-Myers, my college had a radio station.
All right. Awesome. Okay. And then also, Tracy, we're sticking with you. You wrote a lot of these. The Pixies,
Pixies.
one of my favorite albums. Go ahead, Thrash.
Cindy D. Was Blondie alt rock? I'm assuming she's saying there, or punk rock turned up pop. I'm gonna say it was rock, but it certainly had a. Oh, I'm sorry. I keep doing this. Ian, so you
No,
take it.
go ahead. Go ahead. I like what you're saying. I'm agreeing
Yes,
with all of it.
it certainly had an underground influence to it.
Yeah.
But yes, it was rock and roll. It was, I guess you'd call it punk
Like
40.
pop. Yeah, like pop. Oh, Punk 40. I like
Punk
that. I
40.
like that.
Darrell Bellinger, my home city of Philly, nice city, currently has an alt rock radio station. It's called Alt 104.5, formerly Radio 104.5. Its call letters are WRFF. Check it out for yourself. Next time in Philly, I'll do
Yes.
that.
Hey, Terrell, just so you know, I did get in touch with Morgan Richter over on her channel. Who she does? She also does a Gen X channel that you recommended. I subscribed. She subscribed to mine. I asked her to be on the podcast, and she politely declined. And because she's got some, she suffers with anxiety, so she didn't want to do that. So totally cool, but thank you for that. It's a great channel. If you're into Gen X pop culture, definitely check her out. Good find, Terrell. Good find. By the way, there's another channel out there called Dueling Decades. I don't know if you've heard of that channel or not. That's a lot of fun. All right, let's go further
John
down
Jones
here.
again. Hello again, John. To everyone, how do personal values affect what you listen to then or now? Great question.
Ooh,
Let's
ooh.
see.
More, not as much, sir. Not as much as they should. This is one of my great areas of non sanctification, is in the area of
Good answer.
music. It really is one of the areas I struggle with. I don't have too much time struggling with what I watch, like literally, like because I know we kind of have the same background, evangelical background, but as far as listening to stuff, like I just listen to some of the most ungodly music, and I have to repent of it. But I really do like some of the stuff, and every once in a while I'll go like, I shouldn't listen to that, and I don't, and I turn it off. One band, and I will mention this because you asked, that I just don't listen to anymore, that I used to really listen to a lot, is Nine Inch Nails, and I just don't like their over the top atheism. It's just, to me, it's as bad as listening to a band that's over the top evangelical. You know what I mean? It's just like it's just like people can preach from both sides of the aisles, and it just gets weary. It just gets weary to hear somebody's worldview all the time in their music. It's just like, I understand there's a degree of that, but just like you have people like myself who's an evangelical who wants to see people come to the Lord and get saved and all that stuff. But you also have people who are atheists who are like, "Oh, I want you to be an atheist just like I'm an atheist." And they preach their atheism as well. And I think that does wear on me. So maybe that answers your question, maybe it doesn't. When I was younger, for sure, my mom did like kind of make sure that I wasn't listening to too much, but she had her own issues she was dealing with. So I did get to listen to a lot of devil music and stuff like that when I was a kid that I probably shouldn't have listened to.
Secular rock.
Yes, of course, of course.
Roth-Myers, in Chicago, there's a progressive station called WXRT, and they play alt rock.
Yes.
Cindy D, what about Leif Garrett, Dave? Laugh out loud.
Oh, well, Dave's not here, but I'm sure he'd say he listened to it, as we all did. I wasn't a fan.
Yeah.
He did have a rock album that came out in the maybe the early 2000s. I can't remember, or the 90s. He was trying to make a comeback.
Yeah.
And did you listen to that album?
Me, no. My wife did, but me, yeah. Not a huge fan. I must confess, nothing against the man, but just not my taste.
Yeah, I think he did an okay job. It's like with Tiffany. I don't know if you knew Tiffany. She had a new album out like a while back, and it was actually pretty good. It was pretty good. It wasn't that bubblegum pop stuff. She actually made a decent album. It was very critically acclaimed, but it just didn't go anywhere, unfortunately. So
because it was Tiffany,
yeah, it was just but it was a good album. People should listen to it. It was actually fairly decent.
Terrell Bellinger. When I was younger, we used to have Y100 or W-Ply, which was a great alt rock station. Today, it's now WRNB, which is an R&B. Yep, we lost it. R&B hip hop, I'm guessing. Oh, and Cindy D says Bazia sung "A New Day for You," and she sung background for Patrick Swayze. She's like the wind. I know she's like the wind.
I don't have anything to say about either one of those. I don't know.
John Collins. Oh, did you like the band Striper?
I didn't. I didn't like them. There were some other bands that were Christian bands back then that I thought were better. I thought Bloodgood was better. I didn't like Striper. I just didn't. And it didn't have anything to do with Christianity or anything like that. It just had to do with the fact that people loved Michael Sweet's voice, and I just did not love his voice. It was too clean for me, and they sounded too produced. It's not to say that I hated everything, but it just wasn't my jam. It was too overproduced. Their stuff's just too overproduced.
Was To Hell with the Devil one of theirs? Was that their album?
Which one?
To Hell with the Devil? Was that Striper?
Yes. Yeah, To Hell with the Devil.
That actually got a lot of airplay on my college radio station, believe it or not, at the time. Yeah.
I'm glad that they got the exposure that they did, because it brought some, interest to Christianity, and they throw Bibles out at their concerts and stuff like that, which I really appreciated. But as far as a band, as far as music goes, that's one of those bands where every member of the band is an excellent musician, but their songs I just didn't like. Same, there were bands that were like that. Like he was a great singer, but I didn't like his voice, and I didn't like the music. And the Oz Fox was a great guitarist, but I just didn't like the songs. They just weren't catchy enough. It didn't have anything to do with religious or non-religious overtones. It just didn't catch my ear. But again, Bloodgood I thought was good, and there were some other bands back then that were heavy metal Christian bands that I thought were pretty good. Petra was pretty good. They were a rock band.
I remember Petra.
They were pretty good. Go.
Tracy Roth-Myers says Carlisle. I'm guessing Belinda Carlisle.
Oh yes, Belinda Carlisle. Thank you for that. Yeah, Belinda Carlisle. She went the Madonna route, and then the guitarist Jane somebody went more alternative rock. And Jane, there we go. Jane
Redlin, who did what was her album? It
Frosted.
had which had Rush Hour and a few other songs. I do remember it now. I was drawing a blank before. Oh, Toa Bellinger says, how do you feel about the current state of adult contemporary radio stations?
That's a tough one, because so back when I was still listening to radio stations, which I hardly ever do now, I just stream music at this point, and it just is whatever comes on. But at the time, I didn't. It was a mixed bag for me. Really, it was a mixed bag. So where I am, and back when I was listening to adult contemporary, kind of like 2000, between like 2006 and 2000, maybe 2003 to 2010 ish. Before I really started streaming music and really getting into iPods and downloading what I liked and stuff, there were three main music stations in my town. One of them was adult contemporary, one of them was a classic rock heavy metal one, and one of them was kind of a new alt rock kind of thing. And we would just, at the workplace I worked, we would just go through them and listen to them. And I'll be honest with you, they were all 50-50 splits. All of them. There were 50% of the songs I liked and 50% I didn't. And so when somebody turned on the heavy metal station, I knew it was going to be 50% I liked and 50% I didn't. And then same with the other station, 50% I liked and 50% I didn't. So it was, to me, I don't really have a strong feeling one way or the other about the adult contemporary stations, other than to say that today I have no idea, because I don't even listen to them anymore. I just listen to kind of what gets recommended in my YouTube feed and my iTunes feed. Okay, all right, we're catching up here.
Tracy Roth-Myers says, my spelling is so bad, and with spell check. That's happened to me too.
I have the same problem.
Everybody should become a supporter of both channels.
Yes. I agree. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, John Collins, Thrash, I want your channel to become monetized. Thank you so much. I'm so glad. One thing, since you brought that up, I got to tell you, if you watch some of my older posts and even some of the newer ones, you'll notice that there's ads on them. Apparently, YouTube holds the rights to put ads on posts even when they're not monetized. So don't think that I'm monetized yet or getting any money. I'm still doing this on an apprentice rate. I am still working at it, and I'm working on some new material I want to post with some new equipment I got. But at the moment, I'm not monetized, and thank you very much. Oh, and go ahead, watch the ads. That might help my algorithm.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually did a survey on YouTube for that, and I wrote to them. I said, "Well, do you have any suggestions for us?" And I said, "Yes, please monetize earlier, because even if I get like, I'd rather get something than nothing. You know what I mean? I just rather would. And if they're going to play ads, and that's their right to do, we're all using their platform, and thank God. I mean, I love YouTube. I mean, I spend so much time on YouTube, and it's given a lot of people like myself an opportunity. But my thing is like, come on, let's not make this bar so high. Even if I'm getting, 20 hits rather than 1,000 hits, I'd rather make something than nothing. So, yes.
I'm with you. Roth-Myers, radio broadcasting was my second major in college.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Awesome. Cool.
And Terrell Bellinger says, hope Morgan changes her mind in the near future. Wish her nothing but the best in her health.
Yes, for sure.
Cindy D, did you see the country version of Unplugged? Def Leppard's performed with Taylor Swift. It was actually good. Did you see
I,
that?
I didn't see it.
I
I'll
didn't
take
see
your
it.
I'll take your word for it. I will take your word for it. And then
John Collins. Ian answered the internal question, is it Ian or Ian?
I'm gonna leave it up to your imagination. It's ENC is what I like to go by. And if I ever have a conversation with people off the air, I don't mind answering that question. But there was more than one Ian in school, and because my last name started with a C, I was ENC, and the other guy was Ian F. And that's how they distinguished us. And we were in the same grade, and we grew up the same time. So I thought ENC, oh, that kind of sounds like ENC. So it just became a monitor. It became a moniker for me. People would just say, "Hey, ENC," because it was distinguished between Ian Fielding. And so when you're in the same grade and you're in a small town, you got to be able to distinguish the people's names. So that's kind of what I like to go by. But I'll talk with you off the air. Anyway.
Tracy Myers. I am a Jew, and let me tell you, there are Jewish groups that I cannot deal with either.
Right on. I don't know any of them. I don't know any like, hey, we're a Jewish group and we're gonna play Jewish songs or something. I have no idea. Although I did do a lot of Jewish studies when I went to seminary, by the way, tons of them, tons of them. I specialized in some of that stuff. Early first century Jewish literature. Very cool stuff. What they call Second Temple period Judaism.
Oh, James Mitchell. Hello, James. Jane Wielden. She joined a band called Sparks, which was led by a Vin guy who co-wrote Our Lips Are Sealed. I'm never going to be able to pronounce that word there.
Yeah.
Vin the guy. Vin then guy.
Oh, I don't know.
Vin.
Yeah. I don't know if I don't know if that was before Go-Go's or not
I
before Go-Go's.
if I remember, it was in the early stages of the Go-Go's. I remember the story correctly, and forgive me if I get any of the details wrong. Jane was having an affair with this gentleman who was in fact married. He was a musician as well, and he wrote her this very nice letter about how it doesn't matter what people are saying. We
Hmm.
can just do our own thing. And he ended it with "Our lips are sealed," meaning we're not gonna, we're not gonna fire back. We're not gonna like take part in this Michigan. And it became the song "Our Lips Are Sealed." So I'm wondering if he's referring to the gentleman she had the affair with. That's
Yeah.
just me spitballing.
I heard that too, and then I heard there was a further controversy in the fact that Jane Wilden was not allowed to sing it, but Linda Carlisle sang it because she was the lead singer, even though
Mhm.
Jane Wilden wrote the song.
Song, and it was
And
about her experiences.
yeah, but Belinda Carlisle sang it. I love the Go-Go. I mean, I really did love the Go-Go, short-lived band. But I think Jane Wilden was even though Belinda Carlisle has a great voice, I mean, and she was part of that movement,
Mhm.
I just find more richness in Jane's attitude.
She
Um,
was prepared to sing backups on the song, at least. That was nice of them. Oh, Thresh, do you like 80s game shows? I love all game shows. I used to watch them far back as I can remember when my mother was doing housework, when she was a housewife. I would watch game shows with her. My grandmother was an avid game show junkie, so I acquired taste and it never went away. In fact, earlier today, I was watching on the Game Show Network, I was watching the re envisioning of Hollywood Squares with John Bowser Bowman, where they put it together with Match Game, and it's a lot of fun. I love watching it with the
mm,
old celebrities. So yes
mm.
is the short answer. Cindy D, did did both of you ever play your records backwards back in the day? You could hear the devil, they say.
Yes, this is very interesting because I had a friend who was blind, and he was a phenomenal guitarist. Him and his family kind of introduced me to heavy metal. My very first heavy metal album that I ever got was um, Iron Maiden Live, and it was a bootleg copy that he ran off. He suffered a tragic accident. I knew him before he went blind. A truck ran over his head, actually. It was bad. It was really bad. And I wasn't there. He was in a boys' home because he was a thief and he stole a bunch of stuff, got in trouble, and got in a boys' home. And he was digging in the back, and some other kid got into the truck and ran him over, and it ran over his stomach, then ran over his head, and he went blind as a result. Now I say that in this. He was my best friend growing up when I was between 12 and 15 years old. One of them anyway. And because he was blind, he could get any book on tape. They had that as part of a thing. But they did this really cool thing. He got these tapes that were actually four-sided. They were regular cassette tapes. They weren't like 8 tracks or something like that. They were regular cassette tapes, but he had a player that you could do four sides. And as a result of that, you could play tapes, regular tapes you could play backwards. And so we didn't do it with records. We did it with regular tapes, and we did all kinds of stuff backwards. We did the Queen song, "Another One Bites the Dust," and that was one of the weirdest ones because it does say "Start to Smoke Marijuana" over and over again through the whole song. It's like through the whole song. And what's interesting about that is you could sing into the tape, "Another one bites dust, another one bites dust," and you'd sing it, and then you'd play it backwards, which you played backwards, and it would say "Start to Smoke Marijuana." It was the weirdest thing. So yeah, I mean, answer your question. Yeah, that's an interesting story, huh? You ever
I
do
did
that?
too, but none of my stories are as interesting as yours. That's a great story. That's a really good story. But yes, I did it too.
Yes.
Terrell Bellinger says Bon Jovi went to the adult contemporary route once hair metal / glam metal, pop metal, whatever, started to fizzle out in the early 90s.
Yeah, for sure. I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more. Yes, they're an adult contemporary band. They were just kind of metal when it was cool, and then rock when it was cool, and then now, yes, for sure. Yes.
And John Collins says, do you guys like when hair metal bands go country? I don't like it. I can't think of one that has. Can you name?
Ron Keel. Ron Keel went country. He was in the band Keel, and he went country there. I didn't mean to get past that too fast. Terrell wasn't trying to ignore you or or blow past you at all. Please don't misunderstand me. Just my mouse is super sensitive, so when I pull down, it just hit the next one real quick there. So yes, I totally agree with you. I can't think of anybody besides Ron Keel, but I don't listen to country at all. There's one country song that I like that I can think of, and it's by Dan Seals, and it's called "They Ray John," and that's actually a pretty good song. Sorry about the dog barking in the background, but yeah, Dan Seals, "They Ray John" is a really good song. I always wanted to remake it, and even the twang. I did learn to like older country, kind of. I always like that original sound before the record companies get involved. But as far as country goes, I don't know any other
When it was
bands.
folk music. Folk
Yes.
country is what you're talking about. I couldn't
Yeah.
agree with you more. I think that before it became manufactured and like, yes, I know exactly what you mean, and I agree.
Yeah.
Terrell Benninger again. 1991 was quite a brief period for Christian pop stars crossing over into the mainstream, like Amy Grant and Michael W. Smith.
Yeah. Very much so. I remember that. I remember those crossovers. I was a big fan of Amy Grant back in the day, the 80s. The 80 Amy Grant. I don't know if you remember rock. Oh, I can't remember her big one that kind of put her on the map. She was really good.
Her
Uh,
big mainstream hit that I remember was "Every Heartbeat Belongs to You." In fact, I was
yeah.
that just popped up in my algorithm the other day, but I go, you know what? I'm going to play it out of sheer nostalgia. But yeah, that's the big hit I remember of hers.
Well, it was the one called Rock of Ages or something like that. No, El Shaddai. El Shaddai. That's the one. That album El Shaddai was her first one. That was my favorite one that she did.
I'm not familiar with
Um,
that word for it.
yeah, when you start talking about Christian music, there's not a lot of Christian music bands that I do like unless it's worship music. So, all right,
Peter
Jane.
Meyer says Jane was the bomb.
Yes, she was for sure. Let's try to get through some of these. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to maybe skip a couple of these. Go ahead.
James Mitchell says, anybody heard of Husker Du? Arguably the godfathers of alternative.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Husker Du. As a matter of fact, that's what the Pixies were going for. They said, I can't remember exactly. They said something like a Husker Du meets somebody else or something like that was their ad. That's saying that's we're trying to create a band that's a cross between Husker Du and I don't know Black Sabbath or something like that. So
In
yes,
fact,
I've heard it. Go
didn't
ahead.
they didn't they do a number together? I have a vague recollection of Husker Du doing a montage single with a girl band, and I think it may have been them, but I'm going back 35 years now. But I do remember Husker Du. It's in the
Yeah,
primal swamps of my memory. But yes,
yeah.
Phil Bellinger, Christian pop is also known as contemporary Christian music.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, and yeah. Then you get like K Love and things like that are out. That I don't really listen to them that much. There's a few bands that I do like. I like Jesus Culture. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they have a. If you look up Jesus Culture Revelation song, that's a pretty good song. Like even just as a song, like that's a good song. But the Jesus Culture version of that song, I don't like the other version of it. Um, Social Distortion.
Oh,
Now we're
love
getting
love social distortion.
Now we're getting into some 80s Southern, isn't it when they Southern California? That
Yep.
80s Southern California punk rock. Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure.
I'm
All
gonna have to watch
right.
Repo Man tonight. I'm gonna go through my old DVDs. I'm gonna find Repo Man. I'm gonna watch it tonight because I've been having this like punk wave, nostalgia boon. James Mitchell says my best friend is a big fan of social distortion, kind of like an updated Elvis Costello to me. I
Yeah.
can see that.
I liked Elvis Costello too.
Uh, Apparently, Aaron Lewis has a country hit right now. Not gonna get into the politics of it, but it's out there. I know what you're talking about. Thank you, James.
Okay, thank you for.
And John Collins, Bon Jovi and the Poison lead singer went country. I didn't know about Poison.
Oh, I didn't know. Yeah, I know he kind of does acoustic stuff, but I didn't know it was really um, I didn't know it was a country, but maybe. Of course, I didn't like Poison to begin with, so I didn't like Poison back when they were popular. So both Poison and Warren are two of my least favorite bands.
You didn't like Warrant? Uncle
No.
Tom's Cabin? How can you not like Uncle Tom's Cabin? Well, it's a free country.
I just don't I don't like it. They're just not my favorite band. I don't
I
like
grant
them.
you, Cherry Pie drove me up the wall. But of course, Jenny said he never wanted to write that song. The label, they said they want something that the college kids will play during their beer blasts. So he sat down,
Yeah,
he wrote about 15 minutes. He wanted to do power ballads like
yeah.
Uncle Tom's Cabin. You like that anyway. So, Cindy D, Deep Story ENC. It is a
Thank
very
you.
deep story.
Thank you. And then we got to our final one here.
Hello,
Go ahead.
Bellinger says Do you know that Marissa Ribisi, twin sister of Giovanni Ribist, and star of Dazed and Confused, is happily married to Beck in real life?
No, I had no idea. I had no idea at all. So yeah, just know that.
Yeah,
All
I bet
right,
you.
everyone. I'm going to go ahead and close out the show here. We've been doing this for more than an hour. Sorry it took us too long to get to the just when you get, especially Dave on the show, and we have three of us, it starts to become kind of a conversation. And I wanted to go through as many of those as possible. Please do me the favor right now, because I know everybody on here is a subscriber, but before you leave, think about supporting me over on Retro Serial on the tip jar, and then I've got the Cornflake Club, which is $5 a month, early release on everything. But the big thing that you can do, each one of you, and I know there's a few people still watching, before you go, thank you to Tracy. Before you go, pick one of my favorite or one of your favorite videos of mine and share it on your favorite social media. That just let people know about it. It would mean the world to me. I am trying to get to that 1,000 as Thrashes as well, and then also go over to Thrashes if you haven't already and subscribe to his channel. And I will, in short time, within the next 24 hours, leave links to everything below. All right. So good night, everybody. Thank you for joining me, Thrash, and we will talk again soon. Take care,
My pleasure.
everyone.